Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 51st Annual Raymond James Gasparilla Festival of the Arts. I'm John Shuffle. I'm very proud to be serving as president of the board of directors. And today we have Helen Gotlib. Helen, would you like to do a quick introduction about yourself? And then we are going to show your demonstration.
I'm an artist based in Dexter, Michigan. I primarily work with printmaking. I'm working on a lot of large scale works recently with woodblock and intaglio and dry point, and kind of working on large scale sectional pieces. You can see a couple behind me where I paste things together to make larger pieces, kind of working with the constraints of the size of the press that I have, and just, I don't know, experimenting, always trying to do bigger and better things in this art world.
Yes. Well, I'm really excited. I've not had the pleasure of meeting you in person, and next year I will, because I know we're going to be live and I know you're going to be here.
Definitely.
And you will be the first artist that I haven't met yet that I'm going to go up to and greet. But your video I've used as a I would show it at our board meetings and show it to a variety of people, because I think your video perfectly captures the capabilities that are possible with a virtual show, which we know that, you know, nothing's going to replace a live show. Nothing beats being in person. But I think you've done a really great job of representing your work, and I learned a lot about you and your process in this video. So we're going to play it now.
Sounds good.
Hi, I'm Helen Gotlib, and I'm a printmaking artist based in Dexter, Michigan, and this is my studio. So I share the studio with my partner, Dylan Straczynski. He's also an artist, and I do printmaking, he does painting, so there's a lot of both of our work everywhere. This is my drawing rack area, my etching press where I print all my intaglio and dry point pieces. This is one of my larger new pieces, August Sun. It's a 4x6 foot piece that's actually made of 4 different prints that I pasted together on a wood panel. And then after it was pasted down and varnished, I actually added palladium and gold leaf gilding into some of the petals and the flowers. And then this is another a different series of work that I've been making based on the connection between wood, wood grain, and water. And this one's called Sine Wave. And so what I did was actually hand dyed this paper with the acrylic paint, and then waited for that to dry, and then printed these large tree cookies to symbolize the water. And then painted individually the goldfish on top of that. Here is one of my pieces. This a sand dune piece inspired by the Pacific Northwest and Lake Michigan a little bit. Sometimes it's not just one place that sticks with me, but several different places. But you can see how I'm really interested in incorporating wood grain that represents something like the wood grain represents the water in the sky, and then also the grass. Actually, this is what it looks like before I paste down the individual pieces. For example, the sunflower piece, that's one of the sections. Without giving on it. Over summertime, I just had a lot more time to go hiking and kind of explore different areas. There's this spot called Westlake Preserve. It's about 10 minutes from my house, and I did a lot of hiking there with friends and with Dylan, almost like a wildflowers everywhere, Queen Anne's lace and goldenrod and all these other just beautiful little Michigan wildflowers. And I was like, I need to make artwork about this spot. It's just so magical and has such a relaxing feeling to it. There's just nobody else there. Like almost every time I went there, it was like parking lot's empty. It just felt really taken with it and wanted to try and make it into a piece of artwork. Okay, so when I started this process, what I did was I took a bunch of plywood pieces, cut them into about 2 by 3 foot sections, and then covered them with vinyl spackle. And the key to like a lot of this process is much of the image was made in the vinyl spackle before it even dried. So what I did was I actually used some of these tools for that, which are very high-tech tools. An unwound piece of wire, thick gauge, a thinner unwound piece of wire, skinny gauge, and just took it and just scraped in the gestural image, lines of this whole landscape. Afterwards, once it dried, I used a mixture of watercolor and liquid acrylic paint to paint all over the piece, the spackle, to make it pink. And honestly, I've used like every color for that before, but basically it's just so I can see contrast when I'm carving in my other lines. And then once it dries, I sand it so it's very flat, so it's easy to go through the press. Have that color on there, and then start going in with other tools. Let's see, needlepoint. Punch tool is actually a sign maker's tool, I guess. I don't know, Dylan had it in our studio. You want to get really crazy, bust this thing out. I don't really know what this is for, but which is great for making a lot of lines all at once. Anyway, so I went all in with that, and then I realized that my hand was going to fall off if I didn't start using some power tools on it. So then I bust out the Dremel and started dremeling all over the spackle to get some of the more gestural lines in the goldenrod and the just kind of like grassy textures at the bottom of the piece. And then after that, I thought, okay, some of these lines are really wide and I'm probably just going to wipe all the ink out of them, so I need to have some kind of texture in there. That's when I decided to use carborundum, which is this dust. It's almost like gluing down sand into the plate. And I have some of that right here. You can kind of see these black areas or dark gray areas is where I pasted down the carborundum. And you can see all the like texture there that will print really dark, just inside of the flowers and the tree line up here. And I use a coat of polyurethane and water to seal the piece. I do a couple of coats of that just to make sure all the lines are really protected once I start inking it. Let that dry for a day. When I go to print it, I take a little ceramic squeegee, I guess, and put the ink across the whole thing and use a charlatan to rub it into all the lines and get the extra off the top so I have the nice highlighted areas. Sometimes I use a Q-tip to get the really bright areas, like in the pond in the middle of the piece. I have my paper soaking. I take the paper out, put that on top of the piece, and then roll it through the etching press to get the impression.
pausing to figure out the sound.
Yeah, I know it's a really big file.
Yeah.
We're getting it back up.
Working on it.
I think when, there we go.
There you go.
One other thing that I really noticed about this summer is that as much as there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on, it's like nature just keeps going. Nature just keeps doing its thing. It's not affected by all the stuff we get wrapped up in. And I think that that is what I try to focus on the most. As much as I was feeling like, oh, maybe I'm not getting enough work done, I was gathering so much inspiration from taking these hikes and visiting gardens and you know, just being outside constantly. Now it's all starting to come out in my new ideas and the new imagery I'm working on.
That's, again, that's a really wonderful video, and you so perfectly explain your process and your inspiration. Printmaking's been a bit of a mystery to me. I'm an artist myself. I'm a
It's still
designer.
a mystery to me too.
I'm a graphic designer and do interiors and whatnot, but I started out as an artist, so I have a great appreciation for fine artists because I don't have that skill set or ability. But one of my dear friends is a printmaker, and she has never shown me any of her work.
What?
And which is a little crazy. She just is, she's very private with it. So I never fully understood what she did. And through watching your video, I start to understand printmaking more.
Do you know like even what kind of printmaking she does, or?
I don't. And so educate me, what are the different types of printmaking?
Well, I mean, there's so many different types, but there's woodblock, there's intaglio and dry point and etching, which is more like the piece that I was working on in the video.
Yep.
Is more that dry point technique.
Yep.
And intaglio, something where you're like pulling ink out from grooves or lines that have been carved away, versus a relief print, which would be like a wood block or a linoleum block where you're rolling the ink on top and just printing the surface. So you need a lot less pressure. Like for woodblock, you can, and linoleum, you could just print it all by hand. For intaglio or etching or dry point, you really need a press that can exert like a ton of pressure to be able to push the paper down into those cracks and pull the ink out. And also when you print, you have to soak your paper before you print it. So the fibers kind of like loosen up and can take on the contours of the plate.
Yep.
But I mean, there's also, those are just what the types of printmaking that I do, but there's also like silk screen, lithography, you know, offset printing, all kinds of stuff for commercial applications. And yeah, could be any number of things that she's hiding in her studio from you.
Yes. She hasn't practiced in a number of years. She became a mom and has been focused on that. And I think plans to return to printmaking at some point.
Yeah, it's definitely
So,
like a time intensive thing.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, watching your video, I realized, I was just going to touch upon that there's a lot of different steps that go into it. I mean, and you work, it looks like most of your pieces are large scale.
Just as starting like maybe 3 years ago, I started working larger. Like before that, 3 or 4 years ago, my biggest printmaking piece was always like 22 by 30. That was like about as big as I worked. It was more like one panel of the larger pieces. And then I became like really obsessed with, I was doing larger drawings, but just pen and ink drawings. And I really wanted to make a large scale print because I really like the just the line quality and different look that printmaking gives. But it's really hard to work on massive plates. And I also don't have a press that prints that big as far as like dry point pieces. And for a long time, I was like, oh, am I going to get a really big press? And what am I going to do? And then I started looking at some other artists, not all printmakers even, but you know, artists where it was kind of like they didn't necessarily have to have like one giant thing they made all at once. It was sometimes these things that are, you know, puzzled together. And I was like, oh, why can't I do that? I can do that with what I have right here in the studio. Like, let's start tomorrow, you know, today. So that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, and I think you said in the video, or maybe it was in our discussion the other day, that you typically print 3 of everything.
Well, like that's like to start out. A lot of times I'll, I think the Sea Ranch piece, one of the colorful landscapes is in there. The thing that I really like about printmaking is not just that I print like 3, like on this large one, I printed 3 just to try and proof it and see how it looked before I went through and additioned all the paper. But also the cool thing about printmaking is that you can take the same image, and if you have multiple plates or even one plate, you can change the color combinations.
Yeah.
And make it feel like such a different piece. You know, if you just change the colors, you know, a landscape piece can, you know, look literally like difference between day and night, or summer and winter, or, you know, anything like that. So it's fun to play around with the colors. Sometimes it's dangerous because I'll get like caught up in one piece for too long. I'll be like, oh, okay, this is cool. I really, you know, have a vision in my head and I'm like, okay, these are the colors I'm going to work with. And I print it like that. And then I'm like, okay, that works. But then I'm like, oh, it would be really cool if I tried it in like this other color combination. And there'll be like another couple weeks pass and I did that color combination. And I'll be like, oh yeah, this idea for this other piece. And then I'm like, but what if I just do one more color combination? And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna spend like a year doing one piece. This is ridiculous. I need to like move on, you know, but sometimes it's hard.
Yeah, that's great. We can pull up your Bentony shop if you'd like to talk about some of the pieces.
Oh, sure.
You know, we're trying to promote the artists as much as we can. I'm proud to say that I am, as of today, and well, I haven't received it yet, but I will become an owner of one of your pieces.
Shipping on Monday.
Yep, made that purchase today. It's been sitting in my cart, but I wanted to do some other shopping first. So I'm excited to see it in person. I really, you know, I think even without you saying it, I think it's obvious from your work that it's inspired by nature. But I think your work, especially right now, speaks to me personally because it brings, when I see the pieces, I just, it makes me happy. It brings joy to me, and that's often what art does for me. So, are there any ones in particular that you like to talk about?
Well, there's a couple different bodies of work, you know, with my, let's see, with my landscape pieces, like the most recent pieces are really inspired by not just, I mean, the most recent ones are Michigan based because I've been here for the last year, you know, just observing everything that's happening around here. But a lot of times, you know, I heard just so many artists talking about this and that do the show circuit, you know, that we're traveling constantly. And I'm so inspired by so many, you know, just get to see this country, you know, I've gotten to see so many cool places and done things in between shows that I've been doing all over the country. And like, for example, the Sea Ranch series and the Pacific Northwest series, all about like Northern California and the Oregon coast and places that I went in between doing the show in Bend, Oregon, and another show in Portland. And then and this is a good example of like, there's a couple different color combinations. I did a nighttime version where I added an extra plate of that light blue plate to kind of give that evening look and carved out the moon. And then there's another color combination of this piece that I also printed on. This one's printed on white paper. So you can see the moon is actually the only thing that's the paper color that's coming through.
That's
And
gorgeous.
and then I did another variation of this piece that is on, I think it's in the shop here, but anyway, it was on cream paper and I printed the, yeah, basically all of, you know, there's a bunch of, and this is when I worked on the larger one, but kind of playing around with changing the colors, changing the feeling. This was actually, I was hiking on the coast in California in Sea Ranch, and there was all these like just super vibrant ice plants growing along the coast. They're just like fluorescent pink and they're growing everywhere. And I just thought like, whoa, those are so cool, you know, and I started taking all these photographs and thinking about how I would make a piece of work about them, but also, you know, thinking I don't want to be so literal and copy like the succulents that the flowers were growing out were like dark green and the flowers were hot pink. And I just thought like, I just wanted to capture that feeling, not necessarily the same exact colors. And so by gilding the flowers after I pasted down my prints, it has that, when you see the pieces, it's hard to see from the photographs, but when you see the pieces in person, it has that real iridescent quality about the flowers. And then when you change the light in a room, like if you walk by the piece, you know, it kind of shimmers. And yeah, so I think I captured the feeling of those, but also these larger pieces were really fun to work on because it's the first group of pieces where I actually started like also always thinking about all the different types of printmaking. Sorry, I feel like I'm jumping around a lot, but like in
No, no.
printmaking, I sometimes the thing that looks really cool about printmaking is the plate itself, but people don't really get to see the plate. So I was thinking, how can I somehow combine the feeling of the woodblock process and then also have these cool intaglio lines and woodblock print next to that. So I built these large birch panels that I paste the print on and then carved, used the same tools that I would carve a plate and carved the sky and painted it and then pasted down my print on top of that. So in person, some of the landscape pieces also have this like real textural element to them.
That's cool.
Not just the raised ink, but also the sky. In the Sea Ranch series and the West Lake Preserve series, you can see the one that I'm holding up, that smaller one on the left. Yeah, that one. So if you go, you can see it in that picture, but it's also kind of cool when you're like, when I'm working on plywood, because like, you know, if you look at plywood, when you carve down into it, it has all these different layers and there's different colors in the different layers. So I also like the element that adds to the piece. Like if you go to the second picture in this listing, you can see you can see really like, or the same one you were already on, but like the detailed shot. Yeah, there you go. You can see how it kind of adds a whole nother element to the clouds. And when you carve down, it's kind of purple, and then it was like lighter wood color. And I just, I don't know, I like sculpture, but I also like to have just these small sculptural elements. And also with intaglio printmaking or dry point printmaking, the ink is always raised because, like I was talking about before, it's pulling ink out of a groove that you've carved. So there's like small textural elements inside the print and then juxtaposition next to this carved area. Really happy with those different textures in the pieces.
That's great. So what inspired you to go into printmaking and make a career as an artist?
I remember I was in art school, and I was really obsessed with going into like the figure drawing classes. I was like, oh, I just want to be in the figure drawing classes, but all the figure drawing classes were like booked for upperclassmen, and so I couldn't get in. And the only, like, I had to have 3 studio classes, and I had 2 and something else, and I maybe scientific illustration and painting or something. Those were the things I was studying. And then I was just like, I don't know, like what else is left, you know? And there was this class called printmaking, and I was like, God, it's so annoying. I can't take figure drawing. Guess I'm going to take this printmaking class, whatever that is. And I signed up for the class, and because I was studying scientific illustration, I always loved to do really detailed, fine work. But it's like, you know, some of these pieces I was working on would, for a tiny little drawing, you know, like 25 or 30 hours, and you have one, you know? And so anyway, I went into this class, and the first project was on zinc plates, an etching class. And, you know, within the first week, I realized, I was like, wait, you mean I can basically make a pen and ink drawing, but then like print as many as I want to have? And I was just like hooked, you know, and that was even before I even realized like all of the different cool things you could do within printmaking. It was just the idea that you could replicate, you know, that fine, beautiful line that you can get with pen and ink. And I mean, less than a week, and I was like already skipping all my other classes, so I could just like hang out in the printmaking studio. I was like, oh, okay, there's so much to do here, like, you know. So that was kind of the start. And I guess like so I think that was my second year in school, and then the last year I was there, I took an open studio class and just tried to. I just knew, I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and so I grew up going to the largest art fair in the country is in Ann Arbor. So because like 4 art fairs or 5 art fairs that happen all at once, so I was going to that as a kid, just being like, you know, amazed and kind of thinking, oh, maybe I can show at the art fair one day. And so just thinking about doing that, like the year I was graduating, I was like, okay, I'm just going to edition all my prints that I made my senior year and show those. And then my boyfriend, who is my long-term partner, Dylan Straczynski, and he was also, we were like, oh, like what if after you graduate, we just like travel around the country and like do some art fairs for the summer? Wouldn't that be awesome? And we were like, yeah, that would be cool. And we got some books like showing, you know, telling us like how to apply to art fairs. And you know, mostly the first year did like some around Michigan, but and I think maybe by 2004 or 5, I did the Gasparilla show for the first time. But anyway, it was kind of like, oh wait, we can, you know, the summer went pretty well, and the first, you know, trip down to Florida went pretty well. We're like, and you know, like in art school, they really don't teach you, except for maybe if you're a graphic designer or maybe doing scientific illustration, they don't really teach you like how you're going to make a living after you graduate. And we're kind of like, wait, we could just keep doing this. Like we get to travel. We both love to travel. And, you know, and it just kind of kept going from there.
So you've been exhibiting for about 17 years at GFA?
Yeah.
Continuously, or have you had some periods where you didn't get in?
Maybe there was like 1 or 2 years. It's almost like either Dylan and I are both in, or one of us is in like almost every year. So it's like I've probably been there every year, you know?
Yeah. Dylan's not doing the show this year, is he?
No, he's not doing it this year. Hopefully next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I don't believe I've met him either, but I definitely recognize the name. And I think you both have been award winners in the past, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So this year, unfortunately, wasn't your year, but as I said last night during our award ceremony or today, I think all of our artists are deserving of awards. I think you all are amazing. So you were at our festival last year at our beautiful new home,
Oh my God, such
and
a cool location. I feel like it was kind of like, oh wait, all of the issues that were at the other, I mean, the other location was also beautiful, but this new one, it was kind of like, oh, it seems like it's always been here. Like why, it wasn't a hard transition, like it wasn't like you moved to a new place and you were disappointed or something. It was like really good, I thought.
it was, and we had amazing weather. It was such a fabulous weekend. And then the next day was the first reported case of COVID in Tampa. And there's one other arts festival the next weekend, and then they were all canceled. So I'm curious to know what this year has been like for you. How has the pandemic affected you or your business, you personally, your art? I know some artists have had they had a lull in producing work, maybe for a variety of reasons. I know that for many of us, there's been a collective sadness that we've experienced. So if you could touch upon that.
I would say it's been an interesting year. It's been like, going through like all these different phases of emotion because, I did Gasparilla. I was actually with Callie Hobgood, the person who was interviewed last, down in the Keys camping, and we were waiting to do our next show in Winter Park, which got canceled when we were down there, and kind of everything started shutting down. And I think at that point, we still didn't have a grasp on what the reality of COVID was or how it was going to affect us because, we were down there and we were like, before the park ranger told us we had to leave, we're like, what if we just stay here and camp for like a couple months? Wouldn't that be awesome? And we're kind of, I was like, that sounds good to me. Like I don't have anything else to do if I don't have any shows to do because my next show after that wasn't till I think June, so I just thought, oh, I've got a bunch of time. And but it quickly became obvious that we were going to have to go back home and figure things out. And I think for the first couple of months when we got back home, it was like not a lot of motivation because there was no deadlines. It's kind of hard to work towards the deadlines. But I actually first got kind of motivated again by this thing on Instagram that this artist in the UK started called the Artist Support Pledge, where artists would, make for sale items that were like $200 or less. And once they hit $1,000, they pledged to spend $200 of it on another artist's work. So I kind of got into that, doing that in the spring. I made a bunch of little pen and ink drawings and sold those on Instagram. And that kind of got me a little bit more motivated. And I think, into the summer, we started hearing more about the vaccine and what, how that was going to affect us. And even for the longest time, I still thought, oh, we're going to have shows in fall. By fall, we'll be, going out west to California or Oregon. And then it was like, nope. And that was disappointing. But I think by that time, I kind of got over the overwhelming feeling and just thought, eventually there's going to be shows again. And this is, I guess in a way it's partially a gift of time, and when once I was able to see it. And so I started being able to work on these larger pieces and also just take time off or just make things more slowly and not be so rushed. Yeah, I don't know if that answers exactly what you're thinking about.
Yeah, no, that was good. I know when we had our practice session the other day with Callie and Pam, you and Callie obviously know each other well, and I love that there's a whole artist community. You guys are family, just like I feel like I have my GFA family, which is both the volunteers I volunteer with, but it's also the artists I've gotten to know over the years. But I love the camaraderie that you all have for one another. Last night during the award ceremony, there were a lot of artists giving congratulations to other artists who won awards. So we just have time for one more question. And I'd like to know if you have any advice you could impart on any aspiring artists.
Oh gosh. I feel like don't let anybody tell you how to make your work. It's like this thing that you're exploring, it's your own journey. And I think, try to mix things up as much as possible, try as many mediums, making a living as an artist is possible. I think a lot of people try and talk people out of that when they're younger. And for me, it's been a really rich, rewarding way of being life and being able to see the country and just meeting so many other creative people that that I don't necessarily just have, at my home base on the art fair circuit. And yeah, just experiment and try a little bit of everything.
Well, great. Thank you, Helen. If people want to connect with you, what is your website and social media?
My website is helengotlib.com. That's HelenGotlib as in boy.com. And I'm also on Instagram at Helen Gotlib and on Facebook as Helen Gotlib Artist.
Great. And people can also access you through March 21st on our online shop, Eventini, which they can enter through our website, GasparillaArts.com. And they can click into the online show. They can either go under printmaking or they can do a search for your name, easy to find. And we don't care if people buy directly from you or from Eventini. We just want you to sell. We want all the artists to sell. So I encourage you all to check out Helen's work. I think it's quite extraordinary. And I would love to own a large piece one of these days. So thank you for being a part of this today, Helen.
Thank you.
And I wish you a very successful show.
Thank you.
And I know I will see you next year in person.
That sounds good. Thank you for all the work that you guys, everybody at Gasparilla Festival of the Arts has done to put this together and to bring all these artists together and everything. It really means a lot that it wasn't just like a skipped year to us. It's really nice.
Thank you. It was important for us to do this, and we've learned a lot through this, and there are some things that we'll adopt going forward as part of our live show. So thank you.
Cool.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.